Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you've had a really good week. For those of you who tune in every single Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live, welcome back. And for those of you who are new to Mental Health Moment, it's Dr. Hammond here with your Mental Health Moment. Every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are talking about all things wellness and how to become the best version of who you are. Thank you for those who are starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your Mental Health Moment. And today's mental health moment, I wanted to talk to you all about how to mentally prepare for the holidays coming up, because it can be very stressful whether or not you're celebrating holidays. Even if you're not celebrating holidays, the end of the year traditionally can be a really stressful time. So I'm going to give you a couple tips today of how to mentally prepare for this crazy, busy, hectic time coming up here. And thanks for those who are still starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Um, and, you know, one of the things to really think about is I feel like for a lot of people, and let me know in the comments if that applies to you, but a lot of times at the end of the year, your to do list gets a lot longer. So, again, whether or not you are celebrating the holidays at the end of the year, you might have other things that are on your plate as far as things that you need to get done by the end of the year. Maybe you're in a certain job where there's certain end of the year goals. Maybe you are celebrating certain holidays. You have to get gifts for family members, right? There's so many things that start to happen at the end of the year. So the first thing I want you to think about is taking an inventory. What does your last couple of months look like for you? What does it really look like? So if you were to just write out what is your huge to-do list, right? Because and the reason I want you to really think about that is because during those crazy hectic times, especially the end of the year, it's really critical for you to also add on your to-do list more self-care time. So whenever, whether it's the end of the year, which is coming up here, in the holidays, or if there's just a really stressful time going on in your life, it's really, really important that you're adding in more self care time. Very critical. And I try my best to practice what I preach to you all. So a couple of weeks ago, I made sure that I took some time on a weekend to have extra self care time as well, just to make sure mentally and physically and emotionally I can get through the hecticness at the end of the year. Because when I started to look at my calendar and I saw the multiple speaking engagements and I see the holidays coming up and I see traveling out of the country for a conference and all of these things are happening, a lot of travel, uh a lot of family functions, a lot of functions for nonprofits that I'm a part of. It's just a really hectic time of year. I knew in advance, I'm like, okay, let me make sure that I add in extra self care time then to make sure that I'm able to bring the best version of who I am to all of these requirements, all these demands, right? So I want you again to think about that. What does the end of the year look like for you coming up, right? And how can you add in more self care time? And then another thing I want you to think about, and for some reason I apologize, you all, my my comments aren't coming in today on here. I think the program is having some issues. So welcome for those who are still starting to join here. I'm sure you're joining from all over. Usually I shout you all out, but of course we have some technical issues on my end, but it's all good. I'm still grateful that you are here and that you are learning again how to become a better version of who you are, which is what mental health moment is all about. So again, today if you're just tuning in, we're talking about how do you mentally prepare for the holidays. And so my first tip is for you to really start to take an inventory. What does your end of the year look like? What do you have maybe family wise or friend wise or solo activities or what activities do you have? What demands do you have? Whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's grandkids, whether it's, whomever, what does that look like for you? And how can you really pencil in some extra time for you, which I know it's hard because we all think like, but we're busy, we're hectic. And I'm asking you to add in more things, right? But again, remember, and for those of you who missed it, we talked in the past about taking a minute, for example, even if you have to add in 60 seconds out of your day to reset and recharge, it's really, really important that you're focusing on you during this time. The second thing I want to ask you all to think about today as we head into the end of the year and into the hectic crazy holidays is, what are your triggers? Because when I say that, I mean for your mental health, because a lot of times I can tell you as a psychologist, I've heard thousands and thousands of stories, and a lot of what I hear is that the holidays can be triggering for many different reasons. Number one, because of sometimes family members that you may have a difficult time being around, or maybe it's functions that you have to go to at work. Maybe it's something to do with socializing with other coworkers that you don't like to socialize with, or maybe it's some other activities that you need to be a part of, but you're having a really difficult time in a social environment, for example, or you're triggered by sometimes if you celebrate certain holidays and you have to give gifts, or if there's financial issues happening right now. A lot of people during COVID were really affected and are still affected, frankly, employment wise. So that might be something that's affecting your family financially, maybe physically. It's really hard for you right now for whatever reason, to do all that you need to do, right, for the holidays. So I really want you to think about, and there's a lot of different things, but I really want you to think about, what are your triggers going into the end of the year? What are your holiday triggers, if you celebrate holidays? And even if you don't, are you triggered by all of it's hectic. The stores are hectic, and there's a lot more traffic, and there's a lot of things happening. Are you triggered by that even, right? So really thinking about what your triggers are, because when you know what your triggers are, it can be more helpful when you're going into certain situations. So if you know you need to limit your time on a certain activity or around a certain individual that really triggers you, and when I say by trigger you, I mean trigger your sadness, trigger your anxiety, trigger your anger, all of these strong emotions. If you're able to limit some of your time with those certain individuals, you may want to do that. Or if you need to limit your time in certain activities that really trigger you towards the end of the year, you can do that. So I really want to remind you all today that just because you've always done things a certain way and a certain tradition doesn't mean you always have to do that for the rest of your life. Right? Especially if it's not something that is good for your mental health. So I urge you to be thinking about, what are my triggers? Ask yourself, what are my triggers during the holidays, and what can I do to change these what can I do, if possible, to either avoid these triggers, or how can I really think about entering into certain spaces, and maybe visualizing yourself being mentally better and mentally able to handle these certain triggers that come about. So again, so that you can bring the best version of who you are into certain situations that you may have to be in towards this end of the year here. And thanks for those who are still starting to join here. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. If you're just tuning in, we're talking today about, how do you mentally prepare for the holidays? So again, whether it's an individual that triggers you, whether it's a financial situation, whether it's some physical demands that you can't do, or just you're exhausted. You might be like, Dr. Hammond, I am physically and emotionally exhausted by the end of the year, right? Because it's been a lot. And again, I always tell you all this. So I'm going to remind you, especially going into this time of year, please give yourself grace. Please, I get it, y'all. I talk to people for a living. Whether I'm talking to people at a speaking engagement, whether I'm talking to a patient as a psychologist, I hear so many stories, And I can tell you that you're so much stronger than you know. I've met the most incredible people. I feel like the most resilient people who are strong. And I want to remind you of that because, again, as we get into these hectic, stressful times, it can be challenging, and you start to get into negative self-talk, which we talked about in another mental health moment. But again, we're trying to mentally prepare, right, to not go down that path. So think about that. And again, thanks for those who are starting to join here as we head into the holidays. If you all need me at any time, you know where to reach me, drnekeshiahammond.com. I did want to give a quick announcement today. I told you all that I would let you know about the upcoming speaking engagements in case you wanted to join. So the next one coming up it's actually going to be a webinar through the Geneva Center for Autism. So if you know anyone that is interested in the topic of ADHD and autism, I'll be one of the keynote speakers for that virtual symposium, international symposium, on November 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So you can go to drnekeshiahammond.com. It has all the information on there if you want to register for that. But again, it's for parents, educators, or concerned, citizens. Really, there's a lot of different topics for that conference. And then I'll be talking again, as I mentioned, about ADHD and autism, some of the things you need to know, some of the differences, and what we can do to help our youth. So I wanted to quickly give that announcement. And also reminder that for Mental Health Moment, the first Tuesday of every month is specifically devoted to mental health for our youth, for our kids, and for our teens, because again, desperately, there's a lot, there's a lot that our youth really needs. So I'll be sharing that information again, first Tuesday of every month, right here on Mental Health Moment. And be sure, again, if you know anyone who has kids or works with kids or has any interest in helping kids or families in any ways, please be sure to let them know about that one. And I really wish I could see your comments today. What a bummer. Okay, so hopefully that little glitch will be fixed for next time, because I love to see where you guys are tuning in from. But hopefully, yeah, it'll be fixed next week on the platform. So though, I did want to remind you to again take care of yourselves, to really think about again getting through the rest of this year here. Staying strong. I know. It just, the holidays it can be a tough time. It can be a joyous and happy time, but it can also be a really stressful and tough time. So I really want you to think about how can you protect your mental health? How can you really focus on you? And I know the holidays are about giving, which is great. And the holidays are about helping other people, which I still want you to do. But also, in addition, I also want you to focus on you and your mental health through that time, so that we don't get to January and you're like, man, I am just so burnt out. I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. I can't function, right? We don't want that. We don't want that to happen in January. So it really takes you, as I mentioned before, taking more time for the self-care. Make sure to add in more time, even if it's a little bit of time, 60 seconds a day, that counts too, to make sure that you take care of yourselves during this time. If you all need me for any mental health resources, any questions whatsoever, you can always reach out, drnekeshiahammond.com. Or you can follow me on any social media platform. I'm usually sending out social media or sending out resources on social media anyhow. And if you are tuning in on YouTube later on, be sure to subscribe. And again, I'm going to be, especially going into 2023, I'm going to be putting out some more wellness tips and some more content for you, because again, I love to see you all showing up for yourselves and making sure that you're working on being the best version of who you are. That makes me really happy that you're meeting your wellness goals. So again, if you need me, you know where to reach me, and I will see you all next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Black Women Empowered Incorporated Facebook page, YouTube, and LinkedIn Live. So have an amazing week and take care of yourselves. Bye, y'all.